People often say, well, Steve, how did you go from the housing projects of Indianapolis, Indiana, being raised by a single mother, high school janitor, and you become president of a division of Comcast, one of the top 20 companies in America? How did that happen? Now, I could say I'm brilliant, and we all know that's not the case, Lee, but here's what happened. The more you invest in others, they will elevate and push you up. And that's how you create value for your life, but you also create value for others.
All right, welcome to the Show Your Value podcast, where we explore the art of value creation in three macro buckets: material value creation, emotional energy value creation, and spiritual value creation. Today, I have a very special guest, Steve White, with me. Steve currently serves as president and special counsel working with Comcast cable leadership and the company on a number of important initiatives. Most recently, White served as the president of Comcast West Division, where he was responsible for $19 billion in revenue, supporting over 15 million customers with a support of 30,000 teammates. White currently serves on the board of directors for Hormel Foods, Shaw Communications, and W.W. Grainger. He also serves on the board of directors for New Leaders and recently served as an executive in residence at the University of Denver. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Lee. I'm so honored to be here with you today.
So great to have you here today. So I have to say, in the last 2 weeks, I read your book, Uncompromising, twice.
Wow.
And I got more out of it the second time, and I will probably read it again here in the next few months just to really go through it. Took pages of notes walking through it. I think one of the things that's challenging is how do you really get your experiential wisdom around value creation out to everybody in writing a book? And incredibly difficult, I think, for anyone. Now, I'm interested. You talk about exhaustion being the reason to write the book. I believe I understand exactly what you're getting at, and I see a lot of it. But could you explain that to our listeners?
Well, Lee, first of all, again, thanks for allowing me to join. But everything starts with one of my favorite quotes. Mark Twain said, "The two most important days of your life is the day you're born. The second is when you find out why." And so life in general is tough because life is not easy. There are ups and there are downs, and some of us have more downs than ups. If you think about my background, growing up, single mother, raised 4 knucklehead boys in the housing projects of Indianapolis, high school janitor for 35 years. So we didn't have a lot. We were set up to be the perfect victim. But my mother said, no victims allowed here. And so when you grow up like that, things are tough. You don't have everything. You can't go to the university of your choice. You're trying to survive every single day. And that is exhausting when you go through life. And particularly in my case, Lee, being a person of color, I ran across a lot of folks looking at me with very low expectations, and trying to demonstrate your worth can be exhausting. But also on the flip side, when you do get an opportunity as a person of color, there's an expectation you're going to bring others along. You're going to serve as a role model. So that exhaustion and pressure is sometimes can be overwhelming. But Lee, when you get locked in on your purpose, when you know why you've been placed on this earth, while you're still exhausted, it goes away and your ability to work through it increases because you know you're living your purpose. And when you're living your purpose, there's energy that you get. There's motivation. And then you realize you're impacting others, and it just gives you more and more energy. So while it was exhausting for a period of times, and sometimes it still is, but knowing that I'm living my purpose, which is to create a table of prosperity for as many people as possible, that gives me energy. And that's why I'm so glad to be here with you today, that if we can just impact one person listening to us today, just one, you and I have served our purpose today in helping them realize their true value and why they've been placed on this earth.
Yeah, I love that. The challenge here, just to go a little bit deeper, is that I find that most people are doing what they think they're supposed to do instead of what they were meant to do. And you mentioned Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, in your book. And he makes the point that coming up with a bigger life purpose can be too overwhelming, but you can have lots of meanings throughout life that lead up to culminating to what this is. So talk about that a little bit, because I really do see a lot of leaders doing what they think they're supposed to do. And I just watch the exhaustion waves happen as they go through it. And I know you experienced it as well. How do they think about coming up with what they were meant to do instead of doing what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, it's a tough question and it's a journey, but I'll start with 3 questions, Lee. Ask yourself this and really sit with these questions because they're not easy. What are you truly good at? Be honest with yourself. What am I really good at? I think I'm a good singer. My wife has convinced me I'm not. So I'm probably not. Number 2, Lee, what are you passionate about? What gets you excited? What gets you up in the morning without an alarm clock? And then when you marry those 2 together and you say, okay, then would I do it for free? Because Lee, I don't need to tell you, writing a book, unless you're Stephen King or John Grisham or some big celebrity, you're not going to make money writing a book, but you do it because you have a love affair with sharing your story with others because you hope it will impact them. But if you can start to answer those 3 questions, what are you good at? Number 2, what are you passionate about? So much so you would do it for free. So if you can start to weave those 3 questions in, that will start to give you some sense for where you are and where you need to go. And for me, it occurred through a fire because I was fired from my job because I was so focused on me, Lee, because I thought my purpose in life was to ensure that my family was never in poverty again. And while that's a worthwhile goal, that should not be the driving force of my life. And I realized because I got fired very early in my career, I was so focused on me. So once you start to answer those questions, Lee, and you start small and you explore, but here's the telltale sign. There's a saying that goes, you die twice in life. The day they bury you or put you in a mausoleum, the second time is the last time somebody mentions your name. So if we can let that be our North Star, how do I impact lives? So long after I'm gone, I'm still mentioned because I know I've left fruit on my tree because of the impact that I've had. So if you start there as a North Star, because most of us, our purpose is never about totally serving us. I've never met anyone that says my purpose in life is totally only to feed me. It's usually impacting others. But start with those 3 questions, and that will get you on the journey of finding out why you've been placed on this earth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And business books in general, or self-help books around, leadership, and yours actually goes to the personal core, which I love, may not sell and likely won't as many books as Stephen King will. But I would argue that there's the potential to create more value than all of the book sales that Stephen King ever had from people taking the wisdom and applying it on the front lines in the real world to create value from reading your book.
Yes, thank you, Lee.
I love what you're saying there. And I think in a really great win-win sort of selfish way, it's a better world to live and interact with when people are thinking and acting in a value-creating way, and serving others, creating the conditions for others to be successful. I think is just absolutely fantastic, and it's just better for all of us, right? It's selfish in a win-win way, in my view, because it's in our best self-interest.
That's, Lee, I bet, there's only so many things you can buy yourself. Let's say you have all the money in the world. There are only so many cars you can drive. There are only so many homes you can live in. There's only so many basketball or concerts you can go to. But real satisfaction comes when someone looks you in the eye, Lee, and say, you made a difference in my life. That gives you a sense of accomplishment and feeling that no amount of money will give you that feeling. And then it starts to multiply. And now you start to see all these leaves hanging off of your tree. It really is a remarkable experience.
I'm sure you have stories of leaders you developed that went on to do amazing things. That when you're talking about this, that's what I see for somebody like you.
Yes.
You
Yes.
developed so many. So what are a couple of stories there?
Well, what a great story, and I write about it in the book. As you mentioned, I was president of Comcast West for 11 years, and now I'm still helping the company more in a reduced capacity. The gentleman that replaced me, Rich Jennings, he worked for me for 10 years, and I remember having a very difficult conversation with him, Lee, and I talk about it in the book. Very talented leader, but his dress would have given people the wrong impression about him and what he was about. And while we wish that were not the case, but I said, Rich, if this is something you're really interested in growing your career, you are creating a shield. You're creating a billboard that is not conducive to you growing. So this difficult feedback allowed him to make some adjustments without losing who he is. Nobody's saying changing who you are. No one's saying changing your character or your personality. We're just saying flex your style for the appropriate situation and adjust. And to see him go on, and now he's president of Comcast West and doing even better than I did, gives you a great sense of, responsibility and accomplishment. So at Comcast, we have 3 presidents that kind of run the day-to-day operations of Comcast Cable. 2 of the 3 worked for me for over a 12, 13-year period. And now to see them in those critical positions are just absolutely, incredible. And Lee, the final piece is by the time this airs, it will be announced that I'm being inducted into the Cable Hall of Fame. And so to accomplish something like that, you can't do it on your own. There's only so many things you can do. It's because you've left a tree full of leaves of others that have gone on to great things. So that is my greatest accomplishment, is making the difference in the lives of others.
That's fantastic. And so this seems like an example where you had a leader that was showing up the way you thought he was supposed to, instead of being authentic and leaning in to get results. Huge difference there. How long did it take to sort of, make that transition? I think that's tough for a lot of folks.
Because sometimes it doesn't always stick, but he got it. He understood it, but he had to process it. And sometimes as a leader, you have to give people room that allows them to process the information. And Lee, while it's very important as a leader to be consistent in how you deal with folks, you're still an individual. So think about how you approach someone based on their personality. So you adjust and flex your style for the appropriate situation and the appropriate person. So I had to allow Rich to process this. And he did, and he started making small changes that he felt comfortable with. But what happened was it allowed people to get past this billboard that says, maybe I'm not worthy, or maybe I'm not prepared, or maybe I'm not ready. All we did was allow the real Rich to show and not be blocked by some of these exterior things. Because while we love to say, Lee, don't judge a book by its cover, let's be in reality, we all have biases based on our experiences, the way we've been brought up. So our job as leaders is, how do we put our teammates in the best position for success? That's all we can do. And then they have to walk through the door. Our job as leaders is to create the opportunity, create the space, open the door, but then they have to walk through. So when you do that, and people know it's a safe environment, that's how it happens. Lee, I'll share this story with you. People often say, well, Steve, how did you go from the housing projects of Indianapolis, Indiana, being raised by a single mother, high school janitor, you didn't have all these connections, and you become president of a division of Comcast, one of the top 20 companies in America? How did that happen? Now, I could say I'm brilliant, and we all know that's not the case, Lee, but here's what happened. The more I invested in others, they would push me up. And they kept elevating me. And so when our bosses were looking to make leadership decisions, they would look around the landscape and they would see this kid named Steve White that was set on a pedestal higher than everyone else. And they say, why is he on that pedestal? Or why is he so higher up? Because my people push me up. When Comcast Cable bought AT&T Broadband, because I started my cable career with a company called TCI, we got bought by AT&T Broadband. Of the top 50 executives, Comcast only kept 2. In 6 months into the job, I asked my new boss, I said, I'm curious, why? And they said, Steve, the more we did our due diligence, the more we talked to the employees, they told us how bad things were, but they always ended, but let me tell you about Steve White. Let me tell you how Steve invested in us. Let me tell you the environment Steve and his team created for us. So while I was probably dead on arrival, Lee, they elevated me and pushed me up where the leadership at Comcast said, well, let us take another look before we make a final decision. And that's how you go from the housing projects of Indianapolis to the president of one of the largest companies in America. You can't do it alone. Don't try. I tried and I got fired for it. But the more you invest in others, they will elevate and push you up. And that's how you create value for your life, but you also create value for others.
Yeah, I love that. I also get a sense there was a lot of learning how to hustle and struggle, all the way through your journey, going to the motel with your mother and working in there and helping her and all the stuff going along with that. And today, with the best of intentions, I think a lot of parents want to take all struggle away from kids. And by the time they become an adult, they're not ready to be an adult. They're now an emerging adult. It might take another 10 years. So I think there's huge value in all that struggle that you had. And when people ask me, hey, where'd you get your start? Well, 25 cents an hour pulling weeds in the late 60s, because my home environment was dangerous and toxic, and I could trust the real world and exchange of value. And you talk a lot about that, in the book. You're creating value.
Opportunity is there for us all. We just have to be present enough to see it. See, pulling weeds, you saw that as an opportunity because you were present enough to see that it was an opportunity. And so opportunity is always around us. So don't judge your life based on the environment you're in now. You might not be in the situation you want to be in. Don't allow that to trap you. There are little opportunities there. I'll share a story with you. His name is Joe. He was a UPS person. He was delivering a package to my home. I just happened to see him pull up, so I walked to the door to greet him. And he started a conversation. He said, do you mind me asking you, what do you do for a living? I said, well, I work for Comcast. Oh, how did that work out? Blah, blah, blah. And I encouraged him. Do you know, within a week, Lee, he applied for a job at Comcast, started as a customer service representative, and within 2 years, he's already one of our critical managers within our operation. So here was a person, doing a noble job, but didn't feel that was where he wanted to be. But he had an opportunity in a brief 10-minute exchange at my front door that he created a whole new path for his life. So opportunities are always there. We just have to be ready to seize it and be present enough, Lee, to take advantage of it, just as Joe did.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me a lot of when you talk about navigating uncertainty. I see a lot of leaders that act like frustrated victims instead of, wait a minute, this is the highest level leadership position and work you can do, and you should see it as a land of opportunities to see more things that you can connect the dots around to create even more value going forward. So talk about that. I mean, most will intellectually understand, oh yes, I'm a leader and I'm here in tough times. But when it happens, they do act like frustrated victims instead of looking for opportunities. Talk more about that. That was fascinating for me reading that in the book.
Well, I start every day, Lee, counting my blessings. And usually when I get to number 2 or number 3 or number 4, whatever frustration I'm feeling, whatever, sense of I'm the victim here goes away because someone has it tougher than me. So how do I take what's been given to me, what I've earned? how do I turn that into opportunity? Now, I believe what's really critical is who you surround yourself with, Lee. If you surround yourself with truth tellers that see value in you, not to say they're telling you what you want to hear, they're telling you what you need to understand and hear. That reinforces your value. But if you're around people that are saying, yeah, that's not right, you should be upset or you should be mad, that just kind of feeds that victim mentality. But when you surround yourself with others, and so that's what's been really effective for me, Lee. I have what I call a kitchen cabinet. And sometimes people come in and out of it based on the season, and it's not tied to title, but these are men and women that I can go to in a season to say, help me work through this, whether it's the first time as a dad or struggling with a situation in work or trying to figure out how do I balance work, marriage, and being a dad. Having people in your life that can help you work through and navigate that is a critical piece of not falling into that victim mentality. I call them road dogs, Lee. And the definition of a road dog is, not that I'm promoting fighting, a fight breaks out, they jump in and help without asking any questions, and they ask questions after the fight. I think you know what I'm saying. Someone that has your back. They care about you, they're invested in you, and they're going to be truth tellers, but you know they've got your back. If you've got 2 or 3 of those folks in your life, then you're a rich person.
Well, you and I are within 11 months of the same age. You look a lot younger, so congratulations on that. And I still have friends that I would consider to be those road dog relationships from junior high school, and we hang out. And I think about the 7 different businesses that I've started, all private. I controlled all of them. It seemed like the harder it got, the harder we laughed as team members. And I developed amazing relationships there where we would run through walls for each other. And that's something that, you talk about investing in relationships. And that's something that can happen naturally. But also, I think there's relationships we can take for granted, and a lot of people do, and they shouldn't. But I love the intentionality of investing in relationships. Talk about that a little bit.
But Lee, it's a great point you bring up. But you can't have road dog relationships if you're not willing to be a road dog. So it's one thing to say, hey, I want road dog relationships in my life. I want people that have my back. But then you got to ask yourself the question, where am I being a road dog? Where am I making the difference in the lives of others? In this investment mentality that is not about you. It's about others that are around you. That's the mentality that allows you to go. And so in a big brain, you might say, well, where did you learn that? Well, growing up in a household with a single mom, I'm the oldest of 4 boys. I had to be a leader very early on. And my mother would always say, it's about the team. It's about the family. Steve, I'm counting on you because I'm working 2 jobs. And yes, you're only 10 or 11, but I expect you to get your younger brothers dressed for school. I expect you to make sure that they've done their homework. And so she really instilled in us, the only way this works is we do it together. And so at 10 years old and 11 years old and 12 and 13 years old, you're understanding that the team is what's most important, not about you. And learning that at a very, very early age has been one of those things in my life that I've carried, one of those sets of values that have served me very, very well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We do all this together. It's a journey for sure. There's so much that we could talk about with virtually everything that you're saying here. Right? I love this concept of we create the environment from which all of our team members create value, and we want an environment that helps cultivate their ability to create more and more value over time. This isn't a set it and forget it game. A lot of leaders, the majority, I would say, don't understand that.
Yes.
You can talk a little bit deeper about that.
Well, our leaders watch what we do, Lee. They listen to us, but they watch our actions more. And they look for inconsistencies. I wish that were not the case, but people look for inconsistencies. So who gets promoted in your operation? Is it the person that's a kind of a solo artist, or it's the person that's focused on team? Who gets rewarded? Who gets the choice assignments? Every decision a leader makes has to be tied to a North Star, because as soon as our teammates see inconsistency, that's when we lose the ability to lead. So step back, do an inventory of where you are, and then have truth tellers around you, because none of us are perfectly, to tell us when we might be getting off track, when we might not be consistent. And then the other point I want to really highlight is, you probably heard this, Lee. You have a boss and everybody says, did good Lee show up today or bad Lee? Is Lee in a good mood or Lee in a great mood? So when your team is focused on you, they can't focus on anything else. So as a leader, you can't have a bad day. Sorry. You cannot have a bad day. Now, if you need time, go find your truth teller friends and you can complain all you want. But as a leader, when you walk through that door, you cannot have a bad day. You have to be focused. You have to be committed. You have to uplift others. That just kind of comes with the job. And the reason that's so importantly, because no one now is saying, boy, is Steve in a good mood today or bad mood? Because now they're not sharing information with me. They're not communicating. They're not being genuine. They're not being open. So now everybody on the team is focused on me, and we're not focused on the mission at hand. As a leader, you get to set the temperature for the room. If you set the temperature where it's nice and comfortable, not too hot, not too cold, people can grow. But if the room is too hot or too cold, no one can grow. So leaders cannot have a bad day. You set the temperature in that building. You set the temperature for your team. Be mindful of that.
Was there a critical tipping point where you figured that out and changed how you led? What was that?
I got fired. Early on in my career, Lee, I talked about really when I really found my purpose. I thought my purpose in life was really to ensure that my family was never in poverty again. And that is a very noble goal. No one can criticize me. But the way I was doing it, it was focused on me and not others. And so I got fired. And I remember Darnell Martin, who's no longer with us. Now, remember, he's been gone 25 years, but I'm still mentioning his name. That tells you the impact that he had on me and others. He pulled me aside and said, Steve, I see a lot more in you than you see in yourself. But if you continue to lead this way, you're not going to reach your full potential. So Lee, he grabbed me by the shoulder, moved me from Detroit to Chicago, and I worked under him for 6 months. I had no real responsibilities other than to watch him and help out and do whatever he needed, and to see how his teammates gravitated to him because he never made it about him was life-changing for me. So I don't know too many people saying, thank God I got fired. In my case, thank God I got fired early in my career so I could adjust. And watching him was a major, major change for me and an impact on my life. And although he's been gone 25 years, I'm still mentioning his name, and I'll mention it until the day I leave this earth.
Yeah, lots of gratitude there. And I would say that's a healthy struggle for you. And all these things can be better in the future. And one of the things that I talk about in a book I wrote recently titled Value Creation Kid, The Healthy Struggles Your Children Need to Succeed, is a value creation cycle where you identify a capability you want, you struggle to get it, it elevates self-esteem, you actually create value from that capability, and you keep taking bigger and bigger and bigger steps if you want to. And it's not just material, it's emotional energy value, which is what I'm getting mostly from you right now, which is the scarcest commodity on the planet, in my view, or it's spiritual, it's connectedness with team members, love, et cetera, whatever that means to an individual. But I look at the struggles that you went through, if I remember this right, and you said you struggled to come up with it, but there were 14 different career moves to go from where you started into the machine to where you landed. An amazing job creating huge value for customers, team members, and communities. How do you think about struggle? I've learned to trust the struggle. The harder it gets, I get a warm feeling inside going, this is going to be really good. It might suck right now, but it's going to be really good. I know it from experience. How do you think about that?
Well, Nelson Mandela said, you're never losing. You're always learning. Now, that's difficult. And I don't want to sugarcoat this, that it's easy to grasp that. But the point here is you're never losing. Every experience is a learning experience. Because, Lee, before you can truly enjoy the journey, you have to understand the struggle. And so through that, if it didn't kill you, it's a learning experience. And I don't know anyone who's gone through life without any scrapes, without any difficult challenges. And so you think about this. I was sharing this with my son. I said, Stevie, his name is Stevie, he's 10 years old. I said, when people get in trouble, it's never the act, it's the cover up. If you think about all the great scandals in our country, it's never the act, it's the cover up, because they put a lie on top of another lie. And the point I'm making to Stevie is, look, things will happen to you in life that might seem unfair, but it's how you respond. If you take the learning and then take it forward, that's the beauty of making this happen. And, it's interesting. We have this little miracle baby. His name is Stephen Andrew White II. We share the same birthday. And I often think that God waited until we got enough knowledge that we could raise this child. So he took us through all of these learning experiences. Now we can pour into this little, what we call our miracle baby. We can pour into him. Because that's what we're going to pass on to him, not money, not financial standing. What we're going to pass on to him is a level of some experiences that hopefully will help him really make a real difference in this world.
Well, Stevie is super lucky to have both of his parents thinking about it this way, because most of the time it's kids raising kids, having no idea what they're doing. And there's huge value in all that struggle too, to come out the other side, if you apply it properly. And I felt like in reading the book, Uncompromising, that it was this giant journey of improving a value creation perspective, going from one end of the spectrum to, wait a minute, how we think about things and owning that and owning our efforts around all of that. What a journey. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, that's why, Lee, it's so important to have others on the journey with you, because we all have blind spots. We can't see everything. But having road dogs, in my case, is my wife, my mom, who's still alive, who's 83 years old, who's coming out, comes out regularly to visit us. Having those people along the journey with you really gives you a sense that you're on the right track, because you've got people helping you and pointing out things and guiding you and suggesting to you, while you still have to make the decision. You're still in complete control. But when you have people that you trust, that helps the journey along the way. And Lee, what about this? Isn't there a sense of accomplishment when you go through a struggle and you come out on the other end? There's a level of satisfaction. And that's why, if you give kids everything, if you make it so easy for them, the first time, as Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the nose. Then if they get punched in the nose later in life, they're lost. So while it's difficult to have your teammates struggle, your kids struggle, your colleagues struggle, it's important that we go through this, not unnecessary pain, but real life challenges, because now you're used to getting punched in the nose and you know how to respond. First time, as Mike Tyson says, you get punched in the nose and you've never been punched in the nose, you don't know what to do. In his case, he bit off a man's ear. He didn't know what to do. It was so foreign to him to get punched in the nose and to face adversity. He responded in a very negative way. So that's why it's so important, as you go on this journey, you embrace the struggle. While difficult, embrace it, because there's a lesson to be learned.
Yeah, that's so true. And I wonder how many leaders intentionally think about, hey, I wonder how I could cultivate my mindset to remove barriers and create even more value over time. What's your experience there? Do you have to make them aware of that to get them to go? Do you think what's that?
I think for you, I think first everything starts with you. So for me, reflection in the morning. So that's when I get by myself, I pray, I reflect on my day. I'm an early riser. My family's still asleep, but that's my time to kind of get myself right. And the more you can role model the right behavior, others will pick up on it, because leadership really is about role modeling. It's not about the fiery speech, although that's important. It's not about let's go get it team, while that's important. It's not about the leader that's the smartest, but our teammates, our families, our church colleagues, they watch us. And leadership through role modeling is so important. And this is why I believe our country is struggling. And while I do believe this great country will, get back to where it needs to be, we've got so many role models that are not role modeling the right behavior. Who speaks the loudest? Who screams the loudest? Those are the folks that get the attention. Those are the folks that are getting all the likes on social media, the more outrageous things you say. Those are all role models that our kids and teammates are watching. How do we continue to put role models in front of them that model the behavior of working together with others, respecting the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with it, creating space, listening more than talking? The more we can put that kind of role model out there for ourselves and our families and our teammates, the better we are. So that's why it's so importantly, who do you spend your time with? I often say, and I truly believe this, show me the 5 or 6 people you spend the majority of your time with, I'll tell you who you are, because none of us are immune. So surround yourself, take inventory. Who are you spending your time with? And does that make you feel great? And are they reinforcing your true value? Because you talk a lot about value. Do you have people around you reinforcing your value?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I tend to agree directionally with you that in this country, from my view, our leaders in Washington are collectively becoming less capable and less moral. And I'm confident and optimistic that we'll move it in a better direction. And we need more people like you, Steve, being out front. And I applaud you for writing the book and conveying all of this stuff out there. And change the mindset of one person. It could be the one person that changes the culture in the country. It's possible, right?
That's exactly right, Lee. And I know we're going to be wrapping up. I want to explain why the title Uncompromising, because people might say, well, wait a minute, I thought life was about compromise, and life is. However, Lee, once you identify your purpose, that's what you become uncompromising in your pursuit of. Yes, life is about compromise. Anyone that's married knows life is about compromise. But once you identify your purpose and why you've been placed on this earth, that's where you become uncompromising, because now you're living your true purpose, and you should never compromise that.
Yeah, 100% agree. I have one more question before we wrap up. I work with a lot of different leadership teams, a number of CEOs. I work with hundreds of companies, and there's this concept of how do you do less better and create significantly more value. And in your book, you talked about, hey, we had all these strategic initiatives. We got way better results when we backed off and just focused on a few. So many miss that. I see these $1 billion plus clients when I start working with them where they can have over 100 strategic initiatives, yet there's only really 3 or 4 things that drive 80% of the value, and they don't focus on doing that better or less better. Talk about that, because most really do miss this one as well.
That's exactly right. Because when you lead large groups of people, you have to keep it very simple. Not that people aren't capable of it, they are. But if you're trying to get everybody to march up a hill together, the mission has to be very, very clear. And what is the definition of success? And so if you can clarify that for our teammates and really focus and be consistent, as you go forward, that's how you ultimately, lead people to success. And Lee, here's a critical point to it. As a leader, you have to help them see how this creates value in their life. See, you can't just be climbing a hill for some noble reason. By climbing this hill, this will allow us to do A, B, C, and D. So now I can see what I get out of this. I remember one of my frontline technicians said, Steve, you have two jobs. Number one is you respect me. And number two, you make sure my W-2 goes up every year. That's how I create value for him, because now he can send his kids to college, or maybe he can help a parent retire, or maybe he can go buy his first house in a safe neighborhood, whatever it might be. Your job as a leader is to say, we're going up this hill. Here's how we're going to get there. And here's how it creates value for you. And so now when I can focus on something that's bigger than me and I see how it creates value for my family, you're on your way. But it takes time and it takes effort and it takes credibility. And so I always start every relationship, Lee, with tell me what your hopes and dreams are. What is it that you're trying to do? How are you trying to create value for others and yourself and your family? Because now I have the basis of a winning relationship.
Yeah, I love that. And the whole purpose for my company, Execute to Win, or ETW, is connecting culture to value creation. And that's my purpose in life, is perpetuating value creation within families, communities, organizations of any type or size. And 90% of the folks within companies, when I ask them the question directly, how do you create value for this organization? And any follow-up around themselves and their own lives, I don't get very good answers to that.
Yeah.
They haven't thought about it.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Lee. I just congratulate you on what you're doing, because it's a thoughtful perspective that the more we reflect and spend time on that, think about the kind of value we can create, not only for ourselves, but for others.
Yeah.
And think about what kind of country we have when everyone's focused on creating value for others.
Yeah, I've thought about that, and I don't think we're getting 15% of the potential value that we could if everybody focused on that. Let's make value creation cool, and the culture in the United States and within every organization. I mean, that's my mission and purpose, and that's where I'm going. So
well, you're on your way. Congratulations on your journey, Lee.
Thank you. And it's been a real honor to be here with you. You've got a lot of commitments going on to take the time out to do this. I really appreciate it. This has been Show Your Value podcast, and I appreciate everybody listening to this. If you have time, please rate and write a review for the podcast. I'm your host, Lee Benson. Until next time, go forth and create value.